Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with David Odier. David is CEO at Launch Mappers and has a bunch of cool experience in other startups such as D&D Club, Crème de la Crème. He was head of international growth there. He was also in the VC world for some time. Nowadays, David, I guess, is in the future of growth. He's into growth hacking and so forth, which is quite prominent in France and Paris. A lot of growth hackers there. They call themselves gros hackers. And yeah, like the family and all of that pretty cool stuff that Dave's onto. So this pod is brought to you by podpire.com. That's my podcasting company. If you want to start or scale or be invited to podcasts like this one, you can go to podpire.com. Podpire, comme ils disent en français. David, welcome to the pod. Welcome, and tell me a bit more about Launch Mappers.
Hey Charles, thanks for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you today. Yeah, so I am based in Paris, although Launch Mappers is a British company. So that's why, although I have a terrible French accent, I can actually speak English. Yeah, in a nutshell, essentially, Launch Mappers is a growth marketing company through which we map and implement growth strategies for ambitious brands. We like to call them ambitious brands because it's kind of evolved from our initial positioning. We started out as a company that was specialized on go-to-market, helping out especially startups, VC-backed startups who wanted to make the most out of their seed stage and trying to really help them go to the next stage of their, trajectory, let's say. That was really great for a while. And now we kind of moved up markets and want to work with bigger brands and work across the full spectrum. In a nutshell, we're structured as a very small full-time team and we rely with a lot of freelancers, specialized freelancers in very specific fields, which allow us obviously to scale and downscale as we want to, but also for our clients, it's also a guarantee that, you know, the projects we want to work on is in their best interest because it's not on payroll, right? So that's kind of a game changer as well. And yeah, we are a fully remote company, operate in many different countries. We have customers in the US, in the UK, France, Germany, Spain. Yeah. Currently with the internet, we don't have any real limits, I would say.
Right. What led you to start this company by yourself? What stimulated the need for you to start that and not continue in, let's say, the head of international growth at Crème de la Crème?
Yeah, I would say life would be the very accurate answer. You know, I was always considering going towards consulting at some point. When I finished university, I applied for all of the big four in Indonesia, in Australia, in like really interesting places, in my opinion. Obviously, I never got the jobs, but you know, that was always on the back of my mind. And you know, as I was thinking about quitting my my previous job, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and told me, "Hey, David, I know what you do. You know, I've been following you and your company for a while. I'm actually launching this freelance recruitment company, and I think I would love it if you could give me a few advice." You know, you didn't think about hiring me in the first place, but you know, conversation evolved. I offered my services. We signed a very nice contract, and you know, just like anybody who sells their services for the first time, you're like, well, if I've done it once, I can do it again. And so here we are, 4.5 years later, and yeah, I keep doing that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the recent event involving Sam Altman's hosting as a CEO of OpenAI?
You know, I think we don't know the whole story just yet. There are so many reasons as to why a founder would leave their own company. Obviously, you know, what's come out of the press is that essentially his interest and the interest of the investor started to become a bit different, let's put it like that, which wouldn't be the first thing that we hear. But also, you know, maybe he just wanted to move on to something else. I think he's a creator, he's an innovator. Maybe he felt like, you know, being the CEO of a venture-backed business wasn't what he was meant to do. So I guess time will tell. Genuinely, I think when you have such an innovative project, it's important that, you know, the father figure remains on board as long as possible. But sometimes, you know, also when businesses move on to the next stage of their trajectory, once again, you need different people. You need people to start a business. You need people to scale a business. You need people to run a scaled business. It's a completely different game. So maybe that's also one of the reasons. But once again, I don't know the full story.
Right. In your case, with your startup, what were your goals this year, and have you accomplished these goals?
Yeah, I would say that we've accomplished part of our goals. We started out, as I was telling you, as a fairly generalist growth marketing agency, which was really cool because we were working on so many different things, right? And that was super appealing to me to be able to work on so many different things. But at some point, as you do that for a few years, you realize the limits of that model, which is that it's impossible to scale. In the sense that if you keep spreading yourself over 10 different kinds of projects, then it's very complicated to scale that as a business. So this year, we've actually decided to narrow down our focus and do less kinds of projects, but be excellent at them. And in that sense, we've now refined our positioning around two big families of work. One which is everything related to prospecting for B2B businesses. So we do fully automated outbound campaigns. We've invested a lot of money in building our own infrastructure, from the scraping, the enrichment, the requalification through OpenAI, and other kinds of criteria, building confidence index, pushing that automatically on campaigns, using custom variables, and so on and so on. And that works really well. We're really happy about this investment and the potential for this type of work. And on the other side, we are now working with bigger consumer brands on the whole advertising spectrum. So everything, as I like to define it, pre-click, on-click, post-click. So how do we get them to come on the page? How do we get them to convert on that page? And what happens from then? And that's kind of like, I think, the leftover of the reality when it comes to sales and marketing. It's great to get leads. Who doesn't like to get leads? What's more important is how do you convert them? And that's where we focus a lot of our energy.
So who do you target precisely? Any industries, any title for us? And what's your precise offering to them?
Yeah, so we target, again, different types of companies. If we focus on the advertising spectrum, we love to work with what I call online brands. So we're not necessarily talking about a pure e-com player, but potentially a retail brand that's been created in the previous century almost, and is now modernizing all of their activities, and they need people to help them through that journey. And in that sense, we work always in two phases. One which is very much strategy focused. We built our own in-house methodology called the launch sprint, in which we really focus on the core positioning, the messaging, building a growth plan, aligning that with forecasts, making sure that it is a viable plan, financially speaking. And if everybody agrees, then we deploy the plan. So that's kind of the way we do things, regardless of the type of companies we work with. And on the outbound side, we love to work with startups that have a very special offering, especially in recruitment, because we built a specific tool for recruitment. So companies that are able to offer what I call neo recruitment services, as opposed to a traditional recruitment company, which we never work with, is also part of our targets.
And I see here consumer SaaS, marketplace, e-commerce, B2B SaaS, that would be the 90% of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of them funded?
Most of them funded or profitable. We did a bit of bootstrap business. We work with such businesses. I would say that if you're such a business and if you're not profitable just yet, I wouldn't necessarily recommend hiring a third party. Focus on what you can do yourself. Get to that point in which you can invest money. Otherwise, it's very complicated for everybody involved.
Okay. What do you charge typically for the services?
We work on a daily rate, so it very much depends. The monthly ticket is around $3,500, essentially. Again, depending on the scope.
Right. And let's say that you run on probably 20 clients at the moment, 10 to 20?
Something like that.
once you have an agency, you have some kind of market research machine. What insights have you got from working with like all these funded SaaS this year?
So this year has been very peculiar, right? I'll give you an example. I just gave you our average figure. In 2022, that figure was as high as $7,000 per month on average. So the average monthly fee decreased by 50%, which is huge, right? So what we see, and I think that's globally a good thing for the industry, not necessarily a good thing for me, by the way, but I think it's overall a good thing. We see businesses that are now less growth intensive, less trying to grow for the sake of growth, regardless of profit margins, regardless of profitability, regardless of whether or not they have viable business model because they were funded. And today, companies are trying to get to that point. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are profitable, but they want to make sure that all of their efforts are towards that goal. And they're going to invest in R&D, they're going to invest in products, they're going to invest in tech. But what comes from marketing and sales should be a real source of profits for the business to compensate some of the losses and investments you make on that side. So that changed a lot in terms of how we approach things, what's being asked from us, how we're being judged as well. Because, in the previous era, because to me, there are different eras, what we had up until, let's say, last year, started in 2010, something like that. The game is completely different. And now today, also from our perspective, we're being asked to make sure that we are delivering profitability. So that changed a lot. Previously, we were helping the business to establish itself.
So, okay, and on their level, general slowdown on your agency level and on the SaaS level, but what growth hacks have you seen function in this day and age that weren't functioning before?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because, although we do growth marketing, the way I look at my job is not trying to find that one short-term tactic that helps you gain, a bit of performance here and there, as opposed to more viable long-term systems. So we're more focused on the later as opposed to the short-term tactic. But if I were to hand over one, I would say that there's something that's been used, not necessarily enough, by e-commerce players, which is to go beyond the online. And I think we are all trying to reconnect with the real world. And that means that I think players and companies need to realign with that type of principle as well. And in that sense, I see that e-commerce brands who are able, to send a postcard to their customer, that has a real impact on retention, on upselling, and also on referrals, because people love to be cherished. And if you think about it, it's also something that's been done, previously, and not just by e-com brands. If you think about Revolut, for instance, which is arguably one of the biggest startups, used to be a startup in the world. They started out with an approach that was based on, we're going to do zero paid advertisements. That has changed, obviously, but we're going to focus everything on organic growth and virality. So they created this amazing packaging, and people would just tweet, make videos about it. They would post on Instagram, they would post on Facebook, because they like the approach to just unfold your card in a very specific way. And so that kind of packaging has a big impact on marketing and ultimately on sales. And I think that's something that's, I think, a lot of companies should try to approach.
For this the remaining of the year, there's only 2 months. I guess wrapping it up from the company side of thing, doing reports on your clients, how the year has been and lessons from that. What will you have on the growth map up from your agency side in 2024?
Yeah, that's definitely the purpose of my meeting with my team tomorrow. So you're right on time with your question. And yeah, it's actually 1 month left when you think about it, because we're the 20th of November. And so I think for us next year, it's really about doubling down. I think we made a lot of choices throughout the year. We refocused, our team, our people. The team structure has changed quite a lot. And I think for next year, now we know exactly where our value is, where we can provide value to businesses. We know how to execute it better and better. So right now it's just about doubling down. And I think, if you think about the history I just gave you, previously, although we were charging very high tickets, we were not in a position to scale at all. Today we are. Today we're in a position to scale. So for us next year, that's the main goal, to try and really pass all milestones that I set out for the business to achieve.
In terms of startups, you've mentioned Revolut. What are startups that really impressed you this year, and what were their growth strategies?
It's a very good one, because historically we're doing a report every year showcasing what we thought would be the most promising startups of the year, and the list was super interesting in 2020, 2021. 2022 wasn't as much. This year, I'll tell you the truth, I haven't seen a startup that has really caught my eye, in the sense that I think they do things differently. I think they have a great market. I think we're reaching a bit of market saturation, to tell you the truth. There's a SaaS for just about anything. There's a marketplace for just about anything. So I think right now we are seeing, a market stabilization in many ways. And I think innovation will come in different forms. Will it come in the form of startups? I'm not sure. If you look at the funding numbers as well, this year hasn't been all bad. If you look at, let's say, the growth number, but that number is very much focused on later stages. If you look at, seed, Series A startups, there are not as many as there used to be. So people are making choices as well. So I'm sorry not to be able to answer your question directly, but I'm just speaking the truth from my own perspective.
But if you take startups like OpenAI, right, just having the best product out there, limiting their list of users, sometimes even stopping the ChatGPT Plus subscription and creating that scarcity, the OpenAI Dev Day, and so forth. You've seen various growth strategies that they use that was quite impressive and made them the most valuable startup in history. What other use cases would you have for this year's of startups that really caught your eye and use innovative growth strategies to make them go through the stratosphere?
Yeah, I think if we take your example of OpenAI is quite relevant with regards to what I was telling you, because OpenAI, although could be qualified as a startup, I would say it's an innovative company, but it's actually 10 years old. OpenAI was created in 2015. They reached this huge market traction in 2023, but it took them 8 years to get there. So does that make them a startup? I'm not sure. And we've seen countless examples like that in the past. If you think about Notion, for instance, Notion is a company that went bankrupt often. They almost went bankrupt, sorry. They almost went bankrupt often until they found their product market fit and they had a huge amount of virality. Is that a path that, other founders should follow? I'm not sure, because not everybody can create an OpenAI or Notion. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend juggling with that line, which is and can be extremely thin. Other than that, I think we've seen really good examples of companies that are not necessarily early stage startups, but startups that just reinvented the wheel in terms of marketing, in terms of sale. One company that I can think of is a company called Dance.co, which is essentially a bike sharing company. But sharing may not be the actual word, because you actually own a bike for the time of your subscription. And at the end of the day, the lifetime value of a customer is higher than the price of a single bike. So if you get two customers for the same bike, all the better, right? Over the lifetime of that specific vehicle. And I think what's really, really cool about them is that obviously they managed to scale in very different cities, in different countries. They started out in Germany. They are very, very present in Paris. They are very much in line with current trends. Less cars, more bikes, additional, let's say, sporting mobility. And at the same time, in order to do the acquisition, they only need more users, because you only need to see a dense car in the street, a dense bike in the street, and you'll see that it's different from the colors, from the logo. And so that takes your attention, right? And from then you can create a sense of virality and that very big snowball effect, which works really, really well for them. In fact, right now, if you want to book a bike, you need to wait a few weeks to get your appointments. And so I think that's a really, really cool example, again, of what we were talking about, which is to connect the offline and the online.
Talking about bankruptcy and challenges, you have faced various challenges running your agencies, and so did your clients. What are examples of these challenges that you faced, and how have you surmounted these?
Yeah, I think the number one challenge that I've experienced being a service provider, and a fairly small one, is the dependency that the business has on me, and also by extension, my customers, which means that obviously they're buying the services of my company, but I've noticed firsthand that they need me as a person more than anything else, for the strategy, to present ideas, to execute these ideas, for my technical skills. And so that's been a real challenge, because how do you scale a business knowing that you can scale yourself, right? So that's been a real challenge that I've been struggling with for 3 years or so. I explored different things in order to solve that. The first thing that I explored was to try and recruit, number two. Let's call him like that. That proved out to be a huge mistake. Because we're, at the end of the day, very different people with very different skills. And that specific person was not able to deliver on that mission that I initially set him out to. So that was a mistake. It took me almost a year to rectify it, because I wanted to believe in it, and I think that's probably a mistake that a lot of people make, not just founders. Something is not working, but you keep thinking that you can make it work, that you can solve it, and it's going to get better. And so you keep believing it, you keep investing time. And at the end of the day, if I were to do it again, I would approach things differently. And I would ask myself the right questions much earlier in the process, in the relationship. So, that was a solution I envisioned that failed. So out of the way, I didn't even think about replacing that person. And so now what we did is to narrow down the scope of services, be much more precise in terms of what we can deliver, and really train my full-time staff how to do that, which meant that I can slightly take a step back from the business, work on other topics. I'm also launching a new business at the moment, which is pretty good. But yeah, I think the main solution that I found, and it's funny because I've spoken with a few people that are starting out agencies in the last few weeks, and I told them the exact same thing I'm telling you. After a specific amount of time, you need to reduce the amount of services, double down on what you can, teach and scale.
Love it, Dave. Where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, on my LinkedIn, David Odier. You can find me over there. That's probably the best place to get in touch. But your audience can definitely reach out to me by email as well if they want to. David@launchmypurpose.com. I'm happy to take any genuine question.
I was Charles Cormier, your host for another CEO Wisdom podcast with David Odier.